Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Pepin, NHL Talk. I'm Thomas Pepin, and let's talk about the NHL. So, in today's stream, we're going to be recapping weeks 20 and 21 of the NHL season. So, that's February 24 to March 8. And then thereafter, we're going to be doing a recap of the trade deadline because trade deadline day is today, and the deadline is 10 minutes as of this moment. So, so we'll cover everything as we usually would in the same order that we usually would. So, usually, for example, I would have trades listed, listed in terms of news and then links to them, but because of all the trades, it just doesn't make sense. And so so we're going to end the stream covering all the trades because it'll be after the deadline. Everything will have come in, and it's the ideal time to kind of review and analyze the trades. Normal order of things, and then ending with the trades, both before the deadline and then up to the deadline. So, so that's the plan, and I guess let's get to it. So just a sec to share everything. Oh, not the wrong thing right now. All right, so there's not much news from the previous 2 weeks. So it's going to be relatively short, and most of it's not only is there not so much the amount of commentary that I'm going to have on it is going to be pretty small. So it should be relatively quick. And then the intention is to talk in greater depth about the trades. Also, maybe some of the signings that have happened. And then, I will have gone over my predictions for the preseason, so maybe I'll touch back on how I think these trades have impacted teams and my predictions and things like that. So, anyways, but all these streams, every stream I do is on the fly. So, we'll just figure it out as we go. So, first thing, Nichushkin, it has been cleared by the Player Assistance Program and is going to resume practicing. I don't know if he's played since that point. It was February 26th. Let's see. Last time. No. So he hasn't played since his last game. Man, he played a lot of ice. Or had a lot of ice time. Played a lot of minutes. So he hasn't played quite yet, but he's cleared to play, at least. Same story with Kuznetsov, which there's more news on that to come. It's already taken place, but more for me to speak of. So he got cleared by the Player Assistance Program, and then thereafter was sent through waivers and went to play in the AHL, which I don't know if he did play. Let us see. So, assuming this is accurate, which I would predict it would be, it looks like he didn't play. And so I know that what I recall is that they've had problems with him don't know if it's related to this, and I don't know if I'm remembering right, but I thought I recall that they were having issues with his relationship with the team, and I don't know what exactly it was. It could have been related to whatever problems he was dealing with, to cause him to go through the player assistance program. Um, and so, yeah, for him to go get sent down, he wasn't claimed in all likelihood due to his cap hit, and then maybe whatever concerns about whatever he's dealing with or the issues related to him. Um, so, anyways, so at least that looked like it could have been the end of that story. But like I said, there's more that I'll speak of because things have developed since then. So, anyways, that was the most recent news. Otherwise, Pettersson in Vancouver, I had a feeling that he wasn't going to sign. There was something that just my gut told me that he didn't want to stay there, and but anyway, so he did re-sign, 11.6 million per for 8 years, so pretty expensive contract. I think I'll speak about that later, but so I'll just give this as the news, and then give my opinion on it later. So we'll leave that there. Kent Johnson is out for the rest of the season, and so I will, of course, touch on injuries as I usually do, but if it's ever any extremely long-term injury, like rest of the season, then usually I'll at least draw attention to it. So, man, 16 points in 42 games so far this season. Had 15 and 10 in the AHL. I don't know if he was AHL then got called up or got sent down or what the story was. I know that there's relatively high expectations of him. But anyways, Columbus is doing horribly, so it's not like it's going to make a difference to their performance. But losing him for the rest of the season. In New Jersey, Ruff was fired. It's so funny because the story goes from them calling, so the fans chanting for him to be fired, and then they do extremely well, and then he turns out getting fired. Like, it's a gong show. Travis Green, he, I don't believe ever did well as a coach. Look at that hairdo. Let's see here. So, losing season. Like, not a great season in 1920. So, miserably poor as a coach, and then he's going to be the interim. So, if they make him head coach, then it's going to be bonehead. But anyways, so that's the story. And like, was Lindy Ruff, like, I know New Jersey wasn't doing or isn't doing as well as it has done, but like last season 52 and 22, missed the playoffs the 2 previous seasons, but the teams was rebuilding, or I guess like growing, whatever you want to call it. So I don't think you could have put those seasons on him. Otherwise, like, his track record's pretty decent. Actually, I guess percentage is probably the easiest. So more or less always above 500 and like pretty decently above, and plenty of great seasons. made the playoffs most seasons. Maybe the variability in team performance has some sort of relationship with like I don't know, maybe he's just not consistent of a coach. I don't know what the exact concerns would be, but I mean, all things considered, going to the third round 3 times, finals once, making the playoffs the wide majority of the time, at least from a performance standpoint, it looks like he's a pretty good coach, and I don't know what's happened. You never know. Like maybe his relationship with the players isn't that great, and who knows? Who knows? Um, Maybe his coaching style is not as effective, but I mean, 52-22 lost in the second round last season would indicate that it's not. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe his fit isn't good with the team. Who knows? It's just uh, how he's been treated in the whole process seems to be unfair. Mind you, I don't follow it so closely that I know all the story. Maybe there's some things he said, or there's been problems with his like I said, relationship with the players, or who knows. I don't know everything about it, but at least from a performance standpoint, and the fact that he, yeah, they were trying to get him fired, and then the team did well. Anyways, it's just a joke. So, anyways, so that's that. This is, I mean, it's kind of a signing. It's not done, but anyways, Kessel appears as though he's going to play with the Canucks. I don't know if he's played at all this season, because there was talks of him going to Europe to, I guess, stay game ready, and then he was practicing with the AHL team, and then, yeah, so he hasn't even played. So I guess Kessel's going to be, at least according to that, he's going to turn out signing in Vancouver, but I guess we'll see. Forsling in Florida signed 8-year extension, $46 million, 5.75 per. And so again, I'll talk about the signings later. This just happened very recently. Eberle signed a 2-year extension, $9.5 million, 4.75 per, which usually I wouldn't talk about below $5 million, but he's significant enough of a player that I thought it'd be worth it, just to draw attention to it at least. So that's that. Now, suspensions and fines. How far back is it? So we are the 8th, 22nd I go back to. I think I covered... Where was it? Okay, so I think it's from there. Oh. I guess I might as well briefly comment on that. So, Kotkaniemi fined for elbowing Hanley of the Stars. Pospisil suspended 3 games for boarding. You can see in the image. So if you're interested in actually seeing what happened, you can go check yourself. But looks as though he's going to hit him from behind. So not good. And that was done. That got hit. Coyle fined for cross-checking Bertuzzi of the Leafs. Kane fined for unsportsmanlike conduct against the Blue Jackets. McCabe fined for cross-checking Marchand of the Bruins. And then Kelly is going to have a hearing for check to the head of England, the Kings. So we don't know the result yet. And so that'll be on the next recap of news. So those are all the suspensions and fines and such. Then what did I say? The 22nd, I believe. I go back to covering any significant injury. So what I would call significant would be a month or more. Cheadle out until next season, it says. Now, I might have already said some of these because sometimes this site updates them, so it puts them to a more recent date. And I can't recall every injury, so some of these could be repeats. And so the reason maybe they do that is because maybe there's been an update or confirmation or a reminder of the length of the injury and stuff. So anyways, Hamilton, we already knew about that. Mark Stone out until the playoffs. This has happened a couple times. It really does feel like cap circumvention. So I don't know. Shady kind of stuff going on. Almost a month. Mayfield, defenseman of New York Islanders. That's a pretty big loss. Anyways, Connor Timmins out until April 17 of Toronto. Any other ones? Yeah, so not very many new injuries, long-term injuries, at least. Man, that thing about Stone, that I don't trust any of that. So there were some recent waiver claims. I forget if Colin White was on last stream, but I'm pretty sure no. So Colin White was claimed from Pittsburgh to Montreal. Hanley claimed by Calgary from Dallas. Wasn't he like a first round pick or something? No. There's something about him. I thought he did well, or maybe it's just what I remember is in NHL that his trade value was decent or something like that at some point. Anyways. And then Phillips claimed by Washington from Pittsburgh. He played for Pittsburgh? I thought he was with Washington for the whole season. Anderson Dolan claimed by Nashville from LA. These ones are just from today. Bjornfoot claimed by Florida from Vegas. Kachuk claimed by Ottawa from Chicago. And Legason claimed by Anaheim from Toronto. So a bunch of claims in the past couple weeks, and in particular today. Signings. So one that I skipped, maybe I should touch on, is the Sandin one. But so we've got Pettersson. I'll go over. I might as well touch on Sandin, because I guess for defenseman 4.6 is significant enough. Forsling and Eberle. So I'll just give my opinion on these contracts. So Pettersson first. Where is it? Okay, there it is. So 11.6 million per for 8 years. So if you're ever going to do an 8-year contract, he's the kind of player. He's one of the best players in the league. Yeah, his production, 102 points, 39 goals, very, very significant. To be over 30 goals and over a point per game puts you in, obviously, in, I was going to say elite, but yeah, essentially you could say that, because there's not too many that would be over a point per game, 30 some odd goals. So, but in particular, he's above, like, so 102 points in 80 games is significantly above a point per game, or at least, in my opinion, significantly above. So, with that kind of productivity, consistent, great pedigree, so is expected to do well. You can more or less predict that that he should be able to maintain similar performance for the foreseeable future. He's 25. That brings him to 33. So basically you're locking up his prime years. So if ever you're going to sign an 8-year contract, you're going to do it with this guy. Now, however, 11.6 million per. Now, so now having seen what happened because of COVID and like the cap staying flat, it's it makes it concerning. So I guess the league, apparently, as far as I can tell and what's been said, is doing well financially. The Caps, give me a sec here. That's not it. I think that's it. Yeah, so it's supposed to go up 4.79%. 4 million is what it's saying, and that's significant. So long as the cap increases at this rate, then you could say that. So I dislike when teams spend $10 million on one player, unless it's like the absolute best players out in the league, like a Matthews, McDavid, Draisaitl, things like that. Those guys are definitely worth pretty much the maximum salary you could possibly give. Now, should they necessarily get that from a cap management standpoint? I would argue no, but in any case, at least market value, it makes sense. And equally, so just the way that GMs tend to approach things, if they do that, I would be like, okay, that's reasonable. Now, for other people that are, some of the highest end talent and producing well, yes, they're worth it, but then those are the cases where it's like you can't spend that. So a great example is Toronto just spending 10 plus million on too many players. And then just to round out their roster, they're always going to have trouble, in particular with defense, goaltending, things like that. And we've seen that. So anyways, so it would be the rare case where I would say that paying over 10 million would make sense. Now, with what I was getting at is with the salary cap increasing, and in particular by 4 million, that's a lot. And who better to allocate it to than your best talent? So, and in particular, a guy that's probably in the top category. Maybe not, like I wouldn't put him quite with like a Matthews, Draisaitl, McDavid kind of thing, but pretty close. Again, given pedigree, past performance, total productivity, things like that. So, anyways, so it maybe my perspective of the 10 million thing is dated or will soon become dated. I'm still going to hold to it until until the cap really does increase, because when you just look at it as a percentage of total cap, 10 million is 1/8 of your team. If they're 1/8 of your total, like your team's productivity, then of course, yeah, great, like that totally makes sense. But if you're not, then you can't, in terms of value, justify it. So this is where it's like this gray area, especially with a player like Pettersson. He's kind of right at that level where you can justify spending that amount on him, but then you have to balance on being able to maintain a competitive roster. So now to get to my opinion, I think it's maybe slightly too high. So because he's not in the same tier as like a Draisaitl, McDavid, and so on, I still would be trying to get him towards, and even with cap inflation, I would still be aiming towards that 10 million mark. Would you be able to sign him at that? Well, clearly, if he didn't sign at that, then no. Maybe that's why my gut was saying, so maybe if I was the GM, I wouldn't have been able to sign him. He would have went elsewhere because he wouldn't have accepted the contract I would have offered. But he got what he wanted in the end, obviously, because he signed. So, and this was the amount. So, is it bad? No. Is it market value? Absolutely. Is it reasonable? Absolutely. Is it what I would do? No. He's below the performance that I would allocate that much money to, given, like I said, how much you need to be able to round out your roster. So, nothing wrong with it, but I wouldn't have done it. So, good for Vancouver, because it feels like a lot of Canadian teams other than Toronto have trouble keeping talent. So good on them to be able to keep a great player, but just not what I would have wanted to have spent. And I mean, if you go over or you have seen my franchise mode streams, you would know exactly the kind of stuff that I do with these types of scenarios. And yeah, so anyways, so those are my thoughts on that contract. Sandin, he signed for 4.6 per 5 years. He was a first round pick, 29th overall by Toronto. Approximately, you could forecast like a 30-point defenseman. He's a minus, though, and has been for Washington. Mind you, Washington's not the greatest of teams, but that's still kind of concerning. So he produces, but maybe can't defend as well. Again, you'd have to look into like the analytics to know if that's exactly true, but at least it probably is correct. So in terms of value for productivity, I would say that's fine. Just maybe his defensive play is not quite good enough. So it's one of those, seems fine, but might not. So it's definitely below what he maybe could have made. I mean, with his productivity, maybe he could have been making like, I don't know, 6 million at this point. But maybe his defensive play, that's the reason why it's kind of lower. So it seems like a good contract, but this is where advanced analytics would really paint a better picture of if it's good. So I don't have a full opinion on it. It seems reasonable, at least in all likelihood. So that's about all I have to say on that one. And then term, it's good for his age and production and all that kind of stuff. So Forsling for Florida, 8 years, 5.75 per. I was going to say, so cap hit is great. He's a 5th round, so not the best pedigree in terms of like how he was expected to do. Played World Juniors and did very well, actually. 14 points in 15 games one year, 4 in 15 the next. So anyway, so up and down kind of, I guess, what you would predict of his potential. But, I mean, came into the league, did decently to start, and then kind of solidified his spot, it looks like. So, looks around like a 40-point defenseman, plus 44 this season already, 32 points in 63 games. If I recall correctly, because I watched, I think, all or nearly all of Florida's playoff games last season. If I recall correctly, he played very well. But I don't want to say that with absolute certainty. But anyways, so would I sign him to 8 years? No, he's not like the highest end defenseman. I would never do 8-year contracts unless you're the highest end player of your position. Ideally, I would want to have something like 6 years max, around 5 years for the type of player, from what I recall of his performance, would be more along my taste. But, you know, cost cap hit seems fantastic. And just because of the duration, I mean, like, that's not overly concerning. Brings him to 35, maybe a bit on the older side, but nowadays 35 is not that old in the NHL. So, yeah, so in my opinion, I think it's a good signing, not perfectly to my taste, but perfectly reasonable and just not ideal to me. But great job for Florida. Not much to complain about there. And then Eberle, 4.75. So again, it's just below the 5 million mark that I usually would take a look at contracts. 2 years. I mean, he's still producing quite well. Approximately 20 goals a season. Like, where he's gotten less is shortened seasons or maybe injuries, but I think both of those are just shortened seasons. It produces very well in the playoffs. And I mean, he's always been kind of clutch, like as a junior player here, he's fantastic. So, I mean, yeah, he's a great player at that cap hit, at that duration, and that brings him to 35, in my opinion. Like, so these are the kind of like absolutely perfect contracts. Now, for him bringing to 35, maybe I would have wanted one more year. Again, like, because I don't follow every player so closely, watch exactly all they do all the time, I don't know if there's any critiques of his game at the moment, but at least from productivity and past performance and things like that, I would probably want at this age a 3-year contract. 4 would probably be too much. So I mean, what's the saying? We're splitting hairs. I think that's the saying. Anyways, at this point, so I mean, I think it's a fantastic contract. Perfect cap hit as per his performance. Duration maybe 1 year short, but whatever. Fantastic contract. So these are, if you could have contracts like this for all your kind of like middle of the pack players, your second liners, third liners, that kind of stuff, you would be in fantastic shape for your cap. So great contract. I would say outstanding on their part. So good stuff. So again, when it comes to scores, if you follow the game closely or you care more, you can look into the games yourself. But I just like to have a browse of any crazy scores. 7-3 Leafs over Knights. That's a pretty high scoring game. Any other ones? 7-6 Penguins over Flyers. That's pretty high scoring. 8-3 Red Wings over Capitals. Seven two Sabres over Knights. That's not. I mean, the Knights, I think they've slipped recently. Last time I checked I mean, they're still in a decent spot. I think they moved to the wild card spot last time I checked, but I'd have to double check because they were second for the longest of times, I believe, and then now I think it's Edmonton. We'll be going over that next, actually. So, but anyways. 7-6 Stars over Sharks. I remember seeing that one a couple days ago. 7-2 Avalanche over Red Wings. 7-2 Islanders over Sharks. For the Islanders to score that much, that's pretty rare. And then that's it. Standings. So, as I've done before, I like to compare it to my predictions. So we'll start Atlantic. So I have Leafs, Bruins. So as always, it more matters if they're in a playoff spot as opposed to the exact position. So I say that my prediction's right if they're in a playoff spot, and I predict them to be in a playoff spot. But the exact position you can't. Like, that would be far too difficult to predict. So anyways, Leafs, Bruins, Panthers. Leafs, Bruins, Panthers for the top 3. So I was right there. And then wild card, Lightning are just out from games played, so the Red Wings are ahead. But I had Lightning, Senators, Red Wings, Sabres, basically all interchangeable. So I'm not far off, and to be honest, to choose which one was going to be in the wild card was extremely difficult. So for it to be Red Wings, I'm not surprised, but technically I'm wrong there. So 3 for 4 for the Atlantic. And then Metropolitan. I have Hurricanes, Islanders, Rangers. It is Rangers, Hurricanes, Flyers. So 2 for 3 there. And then I have Penguins, who have slipped, but are still within reach, so I can't say that they're out. And then that means I'm 3 for 4 again. So 6 for 8 in the East. But Islanders are kind of surging, so they could... Well, actually, if they won both their next 2 games, they could pass... Well, no, actually, they'd be technically from wins below the Flyers, but they... could easily move up there, but they could pass actually the Red Wings. No, but they have the same number of games. So anyways, long story short, so some of the teams that I predicted are within reach anyways. So last time I think it was 7 for 8, so now 6 for 8. It's pretty much the same thing. Now Central, I had Stars, Blues, Avalanche. It is Stars, Jets, Avalanche. So 2 for 3 there. I had the Jets on a wild card, so that makes it 3 for 4. The Blues have slipped. They were in a wild card spot recently, I thought. But anyways, yeah, so 3 for 4 in the Central. And then Pacific, I had Knights, Oilers, Kings, Flames. And it is Canucks, Oilers, Kings, Knights. So I'm 3 for 4 there. Nobody could have predicted Vancouver, in my opinion. Flames are close, but still not that close. So same boat as St. Louis. With Nashville, in my opinion, surprisingly doing well. I didn't think they would be doing that well. So what was it then? 6 for 8 again? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So 12 for 16. So it's right on target for my normal predictions. So not too bad. Not that great either. Point leaders. If you want to have a look, you can yourself. But yeah, people already over 100 points, which is pretty darn good. McKinnon leading the way. Kucherov. McDavid was way behind, and then he's made up some ground. And again, Draisaitl, same thing. He was way, way off the list, and then now he's in 9th. So just kind of crazy how things turned around. And McDavid could be the Art Ross winner in the end, just with how he's picked it up. So and how close he is. So pretty crazy. And then goals, Matthews leading the way there. Goalies, I don't care about goals against average. Save percentage, Hellebuck, man, he's doing well. Swayman, Hill still there. Now, mind you, I don't know if Hill's been how long because I think he was injured, and I don't know how much he's played as of late. So yeah, he has been playing, but he was injured for a bit, so he's playing well, I guess. And then defenseman Hughes at the top there, Makar close by. Dobson playing very well for the Islanders. And then rookie leader Bedard still kept first place even when he was injured. Kind of crazy. So that's it for the news. And we're past the deadline now. So, and by a perfect amount, because there shouldn't be anything else still coming in at this point. What I should check, TSN typically has the most up-to-date information. Yeah, exactly. So it says that there's a trade and it's not listed on Cap Friendly. So Vegas got Hurdle? What's the story there? Pending trade call. So that was 34 minutes ago. So I guess what we'll do is we'll go back to the 2-week period that I'm covering. And then by the time that I've gotten up to date, that hopefully will be concrete, whether it happened or not. So it said pending trade call. So so it's not confirmed yet. All right. One thing I really dislike about how they design their website to explain trades on Cap Friendly is, where is Tanev? So as a great example right here. Is he with Dallas? Is he with New Jersey? Like, it's not very clear here. But, so we know that it's, well, as long as I remember correctly, it was Dallas, yeah. So, anyways, yeah, just a comment about their design there. Is this player or this player significant? Second round pick. No. Fifth round pick. No. So all the miscellaneous is not really worth touching on. So Stars basically got Tanev for a fourth. So a second, third conditional, and a fourth. Does Dallas even need a defenseman? I think so, in terms of just depth. In like depth quality too. Heiskanen, Lindell, Suter, Sakampa, good. Wasn't he? I thought he was a first round pick. Maybe it was Harley. Yeah, it was Harley I was thinking of, the defenseman. So they lost another defenseman, but it was Harley was the player that I was thinking of, I think. Anyways, so in terms of their defensive depth now with Tanev, I think it was a wise decision to get him. I think he's maybe you would want a more offensive defenseman with the Stars, just given how strong their depth is for forwards and like how productive they are. Like I just think that maybe I don't know, but maybe they did need kind of a defensive defenseman as well. Tanev, and I mean he's not like he's effective enough offensively, I guess. So, anyways, was it a good trade? How much they gave up? So, what was his original cap hit? 4.5. To avoid having to take on that cap hit, and I find I'm kind of getting beside. I'll come back to that actually. So, yeah, in terms of what they gave up, second, third is only if they get to the final. So it's essentially a second and a fourth guaranteed, because you can't guarantee you're going to get to the final. Second and a fourth, great pick. And you know what? Yeah, to get you to the final, is it worth giving up the third as well? Yeah, I'm okay with that actually. And then the other guy they got rid of wasn't important in the end. So I think it's fantastic value. Kind of what they needed for defense, and didn't really give up much. Second and a fourth is pretty cheap. But again, he's not going to produce so much offensively. Basically, he's just kind of solidifying the defensive play of the defense. So, and for that amount, yeah, I'm perfectly okay with that because they needed it. So, for what the benefit versus the cost, I think it's fantastic. Great trade, in my opinion. Next up, Nichushkin goes to Toronto. See, and again, it doesn't make it very clear exactly. And Slepitz, was he anything significant? Good, all things considered, decent production in the KHL, 19 points at 53. So that's pretty darn good. For the KHL as a... Is he a defenseman? Sorry, I didn't... No, he's a winger. Never mind. Sorry. So, no, that's, I guess, kind of average performance there. So, anyways, Toronto essentially gave up a third and a sixth for Nichushkin. And is that good? I mean, it's perfectly fine. Should they have gone for him? In my opinion, no. For that cap space, I would have saved it to in some other move later on. Yeah, as a depth guy, fine. Maybe what they gave up was reasonable, but I mean, I just wouldn't have bothered, to be honest. I would have went for more talent defensively for that cap space, especially given how tight they are. So I don't think Toronto was wise to make that trade, but whatever. And then, well, I guess I should have talked about from the other sides of things. So for the previous trade, so Calgary got second. Well, actually, yeah, you know what? Second round pick for Tanev is not very good. So from a Dallas perspective, it's great. From a Calgary perspective, not good. Yeah, not good at all, actually. And then where did Nichushkin come from? He was with Anaheim, wasn't he? Yeah. So Anaheim getting a third for Nichushkin. I guess that's fine. Good enough. So anyways, not that significant of a trade really to have more to say. McDermott going to New Jersey for Bardakov. Who is him? 12 points, centerman. So again, not significant really. 7th round pick. McDermott. I think just a depth play. Yeah, so not really that significant. Not much more to say. Mantha for a second and a fourth. Pretty good production. I mean, he's been very up and down in his career. But good this year. 20 goals in 56 games is quite good. 34 points is pretty good. For the cap hit, 5.7. Reasonable, I guess. So I would say decent cap hit for the performance, at least, in terms of production. Now, so 50% was retained for a second and a fourth. So given how much was retained, I would say that's a great trade for Vegas. And for the Capitals, second and a fourth, retaining the salary is not a big deal for Washington, in my opinion, because I don't think they're trying to have the space to build a Stanley Cup team. So yeah, their return on that trade I think is pretty good. Second and a fourth for that is fine, given that they're not going for the cup. And then for Vegas to give up a second and a fourth, maybe a bit steep, but still definitely within range. So I'd say a decent trade for both sides there. I really like this trade here. Man, is it ever good for Florida, and given how good they're going to be now with So Tarasenko going to Florida, $2.5 million retained by Ottawa for a third and a fourth, or 2/3 if Florida wins the Stanley Cup. So a third and a fourth for Tarasenko with half of his salary retained is a crazy good trade. Tarasenko's been good this season as well on a underperforming team, 41 points in 57 games. Lower on the goal side of things to what he's produced in the past because he's getting a bit older, I guess. 32 is not that old, actually. So, anyways, I think it's a fantastic trade. Florida's going to be pretty darn good, and so he hasn't played yet for Florida yet. So, anyways, great value. Ottawa doesn't get nearly enough back, in my opinion. Florida, I know it's just because I don't think he has. It's just a 1 year. Yeah. For a rental, like, that's fantastic value in my opinion. So Florida very clearly, in my opinion, wins that trade. All right, so Colorado gets Walker and a fifth for a first, and Johansson going over to the Flyers. That's an interesting one because there's kind of a lot going on there. So why? Because Johansson, 23 points in 63 games. So, I mean, the 63 points in 79 is very good. But he's been very up and down as of late in his career. And then Walker's similar performance. So basically, as far as I can tell, I think Colorado was... So the first round pick is essentially compensation for getting rid of the cap hit of Johansson, the $4 million, so that they could then spend it elsewhere. They get back some of that cap hit with Walker, but for similar performance. So basically, and then Colorado, if they're going to win a cup, that's almost like a second round pick. So, anyways, oh, and that's for next season though. But anyways, yeah, they're still going to be competitive next season in all likelihood. So, so essentially, as far as I can tell, it's to get rid of cap hit. And did Johansson have years left? One more year left. So basically, I guess to unload the contract is what it seems like. Plus the fact that they're getting a functional player. His contract's expiring. So yeah, basically it's just unloading the contract, it seems like, and getting a temporary replacement. So if Colorado plays as they're expected to play in that season, making that more or less like a very late first, to spend that much, I think it's, yeah, again, there's like a lot going on because you have the guy that's just staying for the rest of the year who's equivalent performance as Johansson. Oh, sorry, and he's a defenseman though. Oh, shoot. Oh, that makes it a way better trade then. Because he's got similar performance and he's only a defenseman. My bad, I wasn't thinking about that. So, to get defensive depth, do they need it really? Man, that's a very deep defense. That's very good. Could they have used more offensive depth though? What do they got? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Maybe I would have allocated that to forwards instead. I don't know. I don't know if I like the trade. To get rid of... So it's basically they're just getting rid of Johansson and have a good player coming back. I'm fine. I'm kind of indifferent on it. So Philly could turn out getting very fantastic performance out of Johansson. I think he played with Tortorella before, so Tortorella must have had some sort of impact on that. And if he played well under Tortorella, maybe that's the reason. And then in that case, I would say Philadelphia really wins that trade, in my opinion. So if they can get the performance out of Johansson plus that first round pick, Philly very clearly wins that trade. But if everything kind of stays status quo, I would still probably say that Philly wins that trade. But it's not bad for the Avalanche. It's pretty even. But in the end, that could be a fantastic trade for Philly. I guess we'll see in what will happen. Byram going to the Sabres for Middlestat. Byram, wasn't he a first? Yeah, 4th overall pick. Yeah, I guess it was just a bit of a logjam to get in playing with Colorado. But very good performance, like productivity as a defenseman. Very young. Great cap hit. Good pickup, I think, for Buffalo. Now, how is Middlestat? Decent performance. No years left, though. I should close those. It's just 1 for 1. I think Buffalo very, very, very clearly wins that trade. Does Middlestat, how old is he? 25. What's his status on expiration? RFA with arbitration rights. I very much prefer the Buffalo side of things. I think Buffalo gets a way better player in that trade because Middlestat's 25, I think it said, with his production as a forward. I think the value is better in Byram as an asset. So plus he's got 1 year left, plus RFA status after. So in my opinion, what I would want is definitely the Buffalo side of things. So I think Buffalo wins that trade. Next up, so another one of these ones that it's like completely all over the place. So where is Henrique? Obviously, I know it's Edmonton. It's just that this really doesn't make it clear. So Edmonton essentially spends 4th round for the salary retention, I guess it looks like. A first for Henrique and a 5th that becomes a 4th if Edmonton wins the Stanley Cup. They also get Carrick and a 7th. And who is Ty Taylor? Take a look at both these guys. Ty Taylor, not much to speak of. And then Carrick is a forward depth guy, which they do need. So that's, I think, great to have. So a 1st, 5th, and a 4th for Henrique and Carrick. A first is a bit steep, in my opinion, for Henrique, but I think it's okay. For a centerman, guy playing probably 2nd or 3rd line. Yeah, he might fit on the 2nd line. I think it's great, and he's still been producing pretty well, very consistent, like a 20-goal scorer, uh, just over half a point per game, somewhere around that, half a point per game. Um, no years left, so it is a rental. I mean, with them trying to win a cup, and yeah, the fact that they get Carrick as well for a first, fourth, and a fifth, I think it's a great trade. I mean, it's maybe slightly steep, but pretty darn close because the Carrick thing is what makes it worthwhile. The depth. So then now they have a producer and depth, and that's what they kind of need. So I think that's a great trade. Like I said, maybe slightly steep, and then also with the conditionals and all that stuff, maybe makes it a bit more expensive. But um, yeah, in my opinion, I think it's close enough to being basically a great trade for Edmonton and for what they needed. Makes it kind of a great trade. So I think it's a good job for them. And then otherwise, Anaheim to get a first as a rental, I think it's great. And a fifth for Carrick, more or less. Uh, yeah, I think Anaheim does well enough as well. Or because I thought it was expensive, I would say Anaheim does well. So fair for everybody, it looks like there. Wenberg goes to New York Rangers for a second and a fourth. And Wenberg was a first round pick. Hasn't produced like a first round pick. Third of a point per game, approximately. So a depth guy for second and a fourth to a team that probably would benefit from, and 50% salary retention. I'd say that's a good trade for Rangers. Kraken, I mean, it's close enough. Maybe slightly more you would want on that kind of a rental, but I mean, it's pretty darn close. Like it would be more like a second and a third, or second and 2/4, something like that. But anyways, yeah. So I'd say more or less fair for both sides. Good for Rangers. I think that's going to help them with depth there. All right. So another massive trade. Miro Manov, a third and a first going to Calgary from Vegas. For Noah Hanifin and Mikhail Vorobyov. Miro Manov was undrafted, a defenseman. So nothing of great significance there, it doesn't seem like. No, nothing of great significance. But could develop into a decent defenseman, it looks like. Anyways, first and a third for Hanifin. I mean, Calgary's just in a complete mess with not being able to keep good players. That's what I was saying about with Vancouver. Maybe spending a bit too much on Pettersson from what I would want to spend, but to keep players versus constantly lose players, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, I guess. So, yeah. And then Vegas getting Hanifin, man, are they going to ever be deep? So Hanifin, God, their defense is way too good. Oh, that is painfully good. Forwards, I mean, not as crazy deep, but I guess, yeah, they have people on IR that could come up and play. Yeah, man. Only a first and a third, basically, for Vegas for a rental. It is a rental, right? Hanifin doesn't have any time left. And he's a UFA, yeah, so it's just for a pure rental. But I mean, going for another cup, first and a third for him, I think that's actually pretty cheap. So, and to make him fit in the cap, it's nuts. So, I really like it from Vegas's perspective, just again going for another cup. And then, yeah, for Calgary, I mean, it's not nearly enough, especially given how much they've lost over all the years. So just brutal. Calgary's in such rough shape. Anyways, so yeah, I really like that for Vegas, not so much for Calgary. But at least they got something. I don't know. Leafs got Edmondson. So this is where, I mean, they're getting something better than Nichushkin. Third and a fifth, not that expensive. It's a pure rental, yeah. Yeah, so a bit better of a defenseman, and that's what they need. So now with that, does Toronto have a good enough defense? Riley, Brody, McCabe, Liljegren, Edmondson, Nichushkin, Giordano if he comes back. I don't know if Klingberg can come back. I don't know if he's how long term. Placed on November, 5 to 6 months puts them. Yeah, so maybe he could come back for the playoffs, but probably not. It looks like so. He's kind of out. Does that make their defense good enough? Not quite. But it helps. Like, I mean, that's where if they saved more money on, like, Nichushkin not having to spend that money, maybe a slightly better defenseman than Edmondson, or to have gotten different guys from having, like, I don't know enough about Benoit. Is he any good? No. But yeah, to clear up, so Benoit, if you didn't have the Benoit contract there, Nichushkin, to have Edmondson and maybe one better defenseman, or to have a better defenseman and then a Nichushkin. So I just don't like the way that they've allocated their cap to put together their defensive group. So I don't think it's good, but the trade itself's not bad. So I just don't think Toronto's done enough to make their defense good enough to compete. So anyways, Mizek for Perot, is that anything to comment on? No. So depth for depth. Fourth for seventh and Stetcher. Stetcher, they kind of need D. And he's kind of a depth guy. Does that fix it? Fourth isn't very expensive, so that's fine. Bouchard's, yeah. It makes it a very functional D. Is it as deep as you would want to be competitive for a cup? No. But it's something. So I'd say good trade. Just did the Oilers do enough for D? Probably not. What else do we have here? Yeah, nothing really to speak of there. Yeah, so anyways, just going back to Edmonton, I just don't know if they did enough to make them like if you're really going for a cup, you need to have better D than that. With your goaltending not being so certain. I don't know. Edmonton, it's one of those like they're never really going for it, and they're never not going for it. I think Holland's done poor with the roster management more so than cap management necessarily. Just can never pull in the right players, it feels like. I don't know. I just don't like it for Edmonton. I'm not confident that they're going to be that competitive. Like, again, they've got a shot. They always will because of their high-end talent, but I don't know. Anyways, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself talking about projections because I was supposed to go over at the end, but anyways. Let's see. I think this is all just depth. So yeah, that'll help Colorado's depth. Prospect. Yeah, for prospect. So just a bit more depth for Colorado, so it's a fine trade. Beauvillier going to Nashville, that kind of fills the spot of Trenin for a fifth is super cheap. To give him a shot at least of making the playoffs, and then who knows what could happen. And Trotz would have been familiar with Beauvillier, so probably why they picked him up. So pretty cheap. Good, smart trade for Nashville, in my opinion. Weber for a 6. Nothing significant there. I think this is just depth again. It's funny how these trades happen towards the deadline, just depth guys. I guess when you're talking about other trades, maybe these names come up and Duclair's a great pickup for Tampa to give him at least a chance of making the playoffs to begin with, but maybe having some sort of shot because they're not a bad team. They're just not as good as they were. And if he produces anything close to those Florida numbers, 31 goals, 58 points, and 74, man, would that be good. And who is Jack Thompson? A third-round pick. Defenseman producing 32 points and 46. It's quite good. So it's not like they gave up nothing. And a third for a rental, basically. So I like that for San Jose. And I like that for Tampa, to be honest. So pretty good trade for both sides, in my opinion. So the big blockbuster one that everybody was waiting for, Carolina gets Kessel and Ty Smith. So just a depth guy. For Bunting, is Bunting playing well? So. Fine for his cap hit. And a few years left. So not a bad pickup for Pittsburgh. I don't know that guy. Koivunen, I recognize the name. So this guy, maybe potential. This guy looks like he's got potential. Point per game in NCAA is pretty good. Wisconsin. Koivunen, point per game in Liga is quite good. So, I mean, a lot of prospects, and I think that's what Pittsburgh was saying they wanted back. So they got a functional player in Bunting at a decent cap hit. They got a few prospects, couple picks for Kessel. I mean, long term, that's enough. Like I would call it lottery tickets, where one of them, not that they're ever going to replace Kessel, but where they get enough shots at it where it's it could be okay. I still don't think it's maybe enough. I would rather get one piece that's guaranteed to be decent rather than multiple pieces that could be decent. Because depth is great, yes, but you just lost a heavy producing player. So, yeah, and then it's a first if Carolina goes to the final, but then that makes it basically a second. So, I don't like it. I don't think from Pittsburgh's perspective because you're, like I said, you're losing a very high end talent for a bunch of pieces that might never mix together or materialize. So I don't like it really for Pittsburgh. I think they lose the trade. Mind you, it is a rental, so just something to keep in mind. But you're losing a guy that, man, 40 goal scorer, point per game, consistent, great player, playoff producing kind of player. Like, that's pretty substantial to lose. So, man, I almost don't like it for both teams. So Carolina this year has a great shot at the cup having Gensel. But if they don't win the cup and if they don't re-sign him, then that's a lot to give up in potential for a rental, a 1-year rental. So because they've got enough high end in Carolina, they want depth. They gave away a lot of potential good depth. And then Pittsburgh doesn't really need the depth, they don't really need the depth. They need the high end talents to start to replace Malkin and Crosby and stuff. And a Gensel would be the kind of guy. And they didn't get that back. So I don't really like it for either side. But if you're just going for the cup, if they have any potential to re-sign Gensel, then Carolina hands down wins the trade, not even close. But if they can't re-sign Gensel, to just have him as a rental, it's a bit maybe steep, it seems like, from the prospects and stuff. So I don't know. That's one of those we'll have to see what happens in the end. If Carolina wins the cup, then I'd say, okay, it's a good enough price to pay. Like, it's a fair price to pay to win a cup. But if they don't, then, man, I think they're negatively impacting their long-term potential. And then Pittsburgh just didn't really do anything. I don't know. I don't really like the trade. It's a weird one. Subban for considerations. That's a great deal for Columbus. I'd like that. Kuznetsov. See, this is the thing. So, okay, now going back to the news. So Kuznetsov went through waivers and didn't get claimed. And so the reason, I'm certain is the case, is because of the cap hit. So they do have to give up something, Carolina, to get Kuznetsov when they could have had him for free, but they couldn't take him because of the cap hit. So Kuznetsov for a third. I don't know if Kuznetsov is going to get to where he's played in the past. I know he's been great in the playoffs, I believe. Yeah, 32 points in 24 games when playoffs. I think that's when they won the cup. And he's performed in the playoffs pretty well consistently, actually. So just had a bad season this season. Last season looks like he had a bad season. And he's been up and down as of late. So whatever's going on with Kuznetsov, who knows? But as a rental, he's got 1 year left, actually. But the cap hit is going to be half. Well, less than half, 2.75 for Kuznetsov is a fantastic cap hit with one extra year. Even if he doesn't materialize and play well, even if if they have to bury it or whatever, buy out the cap hit, who cares? For a third round pick at that cap hit, fantastic, brilliant trade in my opinion for Carolina. Because if he could produce anything like he has in the past in the playoffs, lights out. What a trade. So, and even for the gamble, the third round pick is just absolutely nothing because you'll be able to get out of that contract no problem if you need to. So, I absolutely love that trade for Carolina. And so going for Gensel plus that, we'll look over their roster later, but what a beauty trade. I like it. Florida picks up more. They got Okposo for, I don't know this guy. We'll take a look at Okposo's numbers. No, it doesn't look like much. Plus a 7th, was it? So not much to get Okposo. And full cap hit. 22 points in 61 games. Like, he's a consistent, good depth player. Wasn't he the captain or something? Anyways, so really good extra player to add to Florida. And again, now adding him and Tarasenko, and I don't know if they've done more. I haven't looked at that yet, but already that's a big boost to their depth. And that was the struggle, is with their injuries and stuff. They didn't have the depth to deal with it last playoffs, and now they absolutely do have the depth to deal with it. So beautiful, in my opinion, for Florida, and not much to give up in both cases. So very, very well done by Florida. Mayors, anything to speak of there? Guy with eventual, maybe some potential, but just depth. Ruedel, I don't know how it's pronounced. Ruedel for a 4th. So Pittsburgh looks like they're getting rid of some of their depth. And what was he? Oh, he's a D. So, I mean, he's just a depth guy. For a 4th, that's something, I guess. Is his contract expiring? Must be, yeah. So it's just, I guess, a rental. Good depth for Rangers for a 4th round pick. Maybe a bit much. Maybe would have wanted a 5th or a 6th, but whatever. Both sides fine on that one. Elson for Pepin. I don't know if that's really anything significant. Oh, Patin's done great in the AHL. Good for him. And then Elson, what's his story? I'd say that definitely Rangers get a better player in the trade. Second and a third for Toffoli, with half retained from New Jersey. Toffoli has been, and he's done well this season too. So 44 points, 26 goals in 61 games. That's quite good. For, how much was it? Second and a third for, is it a rental? Yeah, no years left. Salary retained. For a rental, that's great value, in my opinion. Jets actually, so they've done this in past seasons, and now they really, I think always they struggled with depth in the production out of their top players when it mattered. I think that's a great pickup, and that really, really could help them actually be competitive for a cup now. Great trade for Winnipeg, not giving up much for the rental. New Jersey, fine enough return, I guess. Second and a third seems about right. So, yeah. And if New Jersey's not trying to make the playoffs or doesn't care as much this season, I think it's fine. So, yeah, good trade for both sides. Simic for Costin, basically. Simic, depth guy. Costin, likewise. So, fine, I guess. Nothing really to say. 6 for Zucker. Seems pretty cheap. 25 and 51. 27 goals, 48 points, and 78 is really good for... maybe not good for his cap hit, but... 27 goals. 5.3 is kind of close. Just total production's maybe not the best. I thought he was a center, wasn't he? Anyways, yeah, again, with Nashville just, staying in the mix for the playoffs, not going to make them a Stanley Cup competitor, but makes them at least potentially having a shot at getting around. So, low cost for the rental, great, in my opinion. Arizona would have wanted more back for that rental. Should have been at least, not quite the Toffoli thing, maybe a second or third and a fourth, something like that. 6 is not nearly enough. That's brutal. Man, Arizona sucks. So bad. Oh, God. I almost want to take over. So in my next franchise mode, the plan is to do expansion, but it would almost be better to take over Arizona because they just suck so bad. Take over Arizona, relocate. That'd be fun. Maybe that's the next one after I do the expansion team. Anyway, something to consider. Actually, yeah, I like that idea as the next one after the expansion team. Anyways, we'll think about that later. Toporowski for Maroon, basically. There's the 6th in there as well. Just a depth guy. It's pretty cheap for Maroon. I'd say Boston very clearly wins that trade. Because Maroon, all things considered, produces pretty decent as a fourth line guy. I like it. A deterrent and stuff. I like it. For the cap hits, great. So I don't think Minnesota got nearly enough back. Yeah, well, 6 I guess is fine. Yeah, whatever. 4th for Eric Johnson. Eric Johnson used to produce, hasn't lately. What's the cap hit? Isn't he another guy that played for Tortorella at some point? No. Thinking probably a different Johnson, if it is a Johnson. For a 4th, and it's just a pure rental, I think, right? Yeah. Maybe I don't like it for the cap hit, but 4th for him is pretty reasonable. With Philly, I guess, and we can see the trade above it. They're at least, giving it a shot at maybe winning a cup. I like it. So 4th for him, that's fine, reasonable. I don't mind it for Buffalo either. It's pretty reasonable because they don't need to keep him. And a 4th is okay. Allison for Gurianov. I didn't mean to do that. There we go. Allison, RFA with arbitration. Not really doing much for a second round pick, so you're kind of getting rid of something probably I would want to get rid of anyways for Gurianov, who has played great in the AHL. and otherwise has played great for Dallas in their playoff run there. God, I really like that trade for Philly. Is it just a pure rental though? Yeah, fantastic trade for Philly. I absolutely love that. Awesome. I mean, he might not turn into anything, but I think it's for what he could be. That's a great trade. Peaky going to Boston for Zaboral and a third. Let's have a look. Peaky, defense, decent defenseman. He's a UFA, so it's got term. That's a pretty good pickup. Second round pick. Maybe has potential. To be only a -2 on Columbus is pretty darn good, having been a -41 the previous season. Yeah, Peaky could turn into something. And Zaboral, who I guess never turned into anything but was a first round pick. To get Peaky back, he's going to be a UFA. Peaky for just basically getting rid of Zaboral for third? That's great. Man, I really like that trade for Boston. Hate it for Columbus. Huh. I mean, Peaky maybe hasn't played as well as he could have. Playing for a garbage team. Put him on a good team, maybe he's going to do great. So I really like that for Boston, and I don't think Columbus got nearly enough for him. Wow. Man, Columbus is garbage. Another team that's just absolute garbage. So poorly managed. Florida gets Hellberg for Weber. I don't know either of these guys. Weber. Ugh. Garbage goalie. For another goalie who is actually decent as in case of injuries and stuff. Great depth move for basically nothing. Fantastic. Love it. That's awesome for Florida. No brainer. Jake Allen going to New Jersey. Half of his salary retained for a third. An extra year on his contract. I think a great goalie just playing on a garbage team. Mind you, maybe from playing on such a garbage team that it really wears you down. Maybe he won't be as good as he has been in the past. But put him on a decent team and he might do well. He did great with St. Louis when he was there, so maybe being with New Jersey, that's going to be close enough to the same and where he could do well. New Jersey needs a goalie. Yeah. So basically, yeah, Jake Allen for a third is super cheap for New Jersey. I love that trade for New Jersey. Montreal didn't get nearly enough back. Not even a second round if he... Yeah, and I don't like the conditions either. So, not nearly enough for Allen. I would say at least a second, probably, because you got an extra year on him. Man, I love that for New Jersey. Montreal, another garbage team. Jeez. Just brutal everywhere. Like, there's some teams that are just such garbage teams. Arizona only gets a fifth and has to give up a seventh, and Dumba goes to Tampa. Great for Tampa because Tampa needed that defenseman. That's going to make a difference for Tampa's shot at least making the playoffs and maybe having a potential, I'd say a long shot chance of winning a cup, but they could now, having picked up Dumba too. think that makes a big difference. So, super cheap cost, great for Tampa. I really like that. Man, and I think yeah, because we're at the end here of the list. I'm just gonna quickly take a look because I'm pretty sure not significant and not significant probably. No. So let's refresh and see if we have any updates. Any other ones come in? So not yet. So we've got the Hurdle trade. Is it so I think it's official, it says, but it's not. They traded Vanacek. So there's a few more trades that are not posted. Let's see if do they have the trades on TSN? Because this is why I wanted to have it go, the stream to go past the deadline, because some of these trades are still coming in, but these are even taking a bit long. Yeah, there's a bunch more. So I guess just Cap Friendly hasn't caught up. So I'll just skim through to see if there's any that I haven't covered, that TSN has. And given the timing, because it's 4:30 Eastern, there shouldn't be anything else. So there's Roslovic. Wow. Okay, well, I'll have to analyze from the cap-friendly sites. So Roslovic will have to go to... Is he still on Columbus on this site? Let's have a look. So yeah, it says he's still there. So that's a rental for a fourth. For a rental of Roslovic. I mean, I don't like Roslovic. When he played for the Jets, I never really liked how he played. Yeah, pretty mediocre player. Depth guy, like a third liner, maybe fourth liner. Probably third liner, I guess, technically. Maybe could come up in the lines. He was meant to be way better than he has been. So, but anyways, for a fourth, perfectly reasonable for Rangers, but I wouldn't have wanted to pick him up, basically. So, I don't really like the trade either way. Fourth, probably not enough to get back. Maybe should have been a second and maybe a late pick, or a third and a fourth, something like that. So I don't like it for either side. So whatever. All right, and then Hurdle. What's the story with this? Because this one seems kind of unexpected. Does Hurdle have any term too? Like, that's what I'm wondering. Yeah. Man, he's got lots left. What's going on? 8-year contract. Has he played much this season? 34 points in 48 games, so he's hurt. I don't know the full story on his injury, but it mustn't be that long term, I don't think, because he didn't come up in the list. Great player. Probably a 20-some-odd goal scorer. 3/4 of a point per game. 2/3. No, probably 3/4 of a point per game, maybe even slightly more. For $8 million cap hit. He's 30. That brings him to 37, is it? 36, 37 or something like that. 8 million cap hit for that production is great, but I'd be concerned about his production as it gets towards the end of the contract, given the age. He is a center. So to take on that contract, it's not the end of the world. I think it's fine. At this point, too, just maybe a bit old, so you maybe want it to be 1 year, 1 or 2, probably 2 years shorter of a contract. That cap hit would be great. So that would be ideal if you had that for Hurdle. But what did they give up? So that kind of makes it make more sense. Okay, so Edstrom goes to San Jose. Who is Edstrom? Edstrom was a first round pick. Center that didn't produce that much in the SHL. 19. Mind you, he's young. Junior tournament, not that great. So I don't think he's that great of a player going to San Jose. You never know, of course, he's a first round pick, whatever, and he's young still. So you never know what's going to happen, but so him in a first for Hurdle in 2/3. Sharks retain 17% of the salary. So the cap hit makes it where Hurdle is. So as it was, the cap hit was fine. I would have wanted shorter years. Decreasing the salary, I don't know if that makes a huge difference, but it's some sort of factor in there to make it a lower cap hit towards the end of his contract. Does it really make up for the years? I don't know. Kind of, but it's still just too long. But to get back 2/3 and only give up a first and a guy that I wouldn't worry about losing, I think that's... And it's too... So, as I've mentioned before, with draft picks, they're basically just lottery tickets. And I would rather have multiple lottery tickets rather than... The only lottery ticket that's good is a high first-round pick. Other than that, they're pretty much across the board, all just lottery tickets, and you never know who's going to turn out good. So to have 2 lottery tickets for one, basically, and Hurdle for Edstrom, kind of. I think hands down, Vegas dominates that trade. I don't know enough if the injury is an issue with Hurdle. I don't think so. Knee surgery, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's more concerning, but it doesn't feel... So maybe there's more to it where Hurdle's not as great of a player, but it doesn't... I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it being him having any major issues. So as far as I'm concerned, Vegas just massively dominates that trade. That is just fantastic for Vegas and brutal for San Jose. They're just trying another first round pick and it's not even because Vegas is a competitive team and That's probably going to be basically second round pick. That's brutal. Brutal, 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 San Jose. Why would they have made that trade? Ugh. Vegas, man. What's going on with Vegas? That's wild. So, man, Vegas is doing something. Let's see if anything else is updated. So they do, okay, they have that updated now. So this is the other one that I wanted to talk about that I saw. So Vanacek for Kakkonen. Kakkonen is a UFA, so it's just to have a goalie, I guess, for the end of the season. It's too bad because, like, I think he had a great start, didn't he? Yeah, the 916 in San Jose. And then AHL played very well. So I guess it's just to have a goalie. So, because they're still not out of the running for making the playoffs, so whatever. Getting rid of Vanacek. So it's basically like they're not much of a difference for goalies, but I guess just Vanacek didn't play well and Kakkonen's maybe a bit better. So that's fine. It's kind of apples for apples. Colin Miller goes to Winnipeg for a 4th. Defenseman for depth is great to have. Pretty good production, 21 points in 79 games. Has produced very good, 41 and 82. Nothing cap hit. So again, a rental for only a 4th. Great for Winnipeg. Winnipeg actually did quite well this deadline. Pretty sure I talked about the Dewar one. I think that's it for trades, actually. Should be. So that, yeah, we should be up to date. So I think everything's been updated. And we'll just go to TSN, their main page, to see if there's any other ones that are mentioned here that we haven't seen. So we should have everything now, and I should have covered all of them. So now I guess we'll just take a look at maybe the excuse me, maybe some of the higher end teams and just see how they've done with their pickups, or the teams that have also, made pickups. So Vancouver, I think they're doing better than they're supposed to be doing, so I don't think Vancouver is even worth looking at. LA didn't do anything. Washington didn't do anything. Boston, I guess they're worth taking a look at. Penguins, I'll just briefly have a look. Islanders, I mean, I guess they're just riding with the same team. They've gotten close to Stanley Cup Finals on multiple occasions, so I mean, I think the team's good enough. It's just I don't know what's going on in their regular seasons. Maybe it's coaching, maybe who knows. As soon as they lost Trotz, they weren't great. So we'll see what happens with the Islanders. Rangers picked up a few. Devils we'll briefly take a look at. Actually, there's a bunch of teams to take a look at. Wow. Tons of teams to take a look at. I thought this stream was going to be a bit shorter, but I guess more to analyze. Okay, so I got all of those. And nobody else really did anything. So like I said, just with Nashville to touch on them, they made it enough where, because they're in a playoff spot at the moment, that they gave it enough where they could at least maintain it, maybe win around, but Nashville's not going to do anything if they do make the playoffs, in my opinion. Nothing to speak of for all the bottom teams. Detroit looks like they didn't really do anything. I'll just start with them. So they didn't really pick up anything or give up anything. I think if they make the playoffs, they got a shot at being competitive. You never know what's going to happen with their team, because it's not a bad. It's a decent enough team that they actually could make a final, in my opinion. So the fact that they didn't do anything, didn't give up anything, I think that's smart. Yzerman, he's a brilliant guy, it seems like. So good on them for not messing with anything, given that they could do well even with what they have. And especially for messing up the long term, like the long term consequences of making changes. Anything else I'm missing with those teams? No. So I think I have all the major teams to speak of pulled up, and we'll just have a look. So Toronto basically picked up. Did they just trade for him? Yeah. So just depth. Yeah, so I didn't speak of that trade, but yeah, it's just depth. Do they have enough to compete for a cup? Like I said, with the defense, I don't think it's good enough on the high end. Goaltending, I would have no faith in their goaltending. It's just their highest end production. If maybe all their highest end producers can produce, then great. Just not enough depth. And if they get shut down, which they probably will be by somebody, because once we go over the rest of the teams, you'll see what they're competing against. I don't think Toronto's got any chance against the teams in the East. Tampa, what did they pick up here? So their forwards, I don't think, are deep enough. Because that was my... Actually, also defense I didn't think was deep enough. So forwards, yeah, it's not enough. But with the D that they picked up, it's only the one. I thought they picked up more. Wasn't there another guy they picked up? No, it's just Sergachev coming back if he does, and then Janot. So I don't think Tampa's going to have a shot at a cup. They could maybe get through a couple teams. So, for example, if Toronto met up with them, that they could be that team that beats Toronto. They could equally lose to Toronto. I think Toronto would technically be a better team with depth. But the goaltending could be the difference maker. So, anyways, so Tampa, I don't think they're going to be, from their moves, any more competitive for a cup, just more competitive to actually make the playoffs and maybe get past a round, maybe two, given that they have experience. So, but Tampa, I don't think they're in any great shape, and even long term, I don't think they're in great shape. They need to make some better moves and stuff. So, Colorado, they picked up Middlestat. Any other things? Trennan, just depth. So, I mean, and then Walker, depth. So is Colorado a better team now than they were? Not really. I think they're about the same. Do they have a shot at a cup? Absolutely. We'll see. And especially if they get back Landeskog, that's like their trade deadline move almost. So, I didn't like their trades, but basically, I think they just basically stayed the same level. I didn't like their moves. So, Colorado's still one of the favorites to have a chance at winning the cup. Just I didn't like their moves, basically, I guess is a good way to put it. Vegas, man, what a weird, crazy team this team is. This organization, I don't know how they've done so well, but man, have they ever. The one thing that's concerning is they have so many IR things, but maybe that is a strategy because I've mentioned before about how that could be a strategy where you just hide salaries in IR, LTIR, and to have them available for the playoffs. So maybe it's very counterintuitive where you want to pick up injury prone players to hide their contracts and then you hopefully use them in the playoffs. Because, I mean, Eichel, I think he's healthy now and is probably will be healthy for sure. But, like, they had the issue with Stone, and he's injured all the time. And anybody else that has major injury issues? Well, just the fact that Hurdle is injured at the moment. Is Martinez... I forget if Martinez can play or if that's like a long-term injury. But Howden's injured. Carrier. It's wild. But anyways, so Eichel, Carlson, Marchessault, Barbashev, Waugh. They picked up Mantha. Stevenson. Hurdle. Howden, Carrier, Stone, with their D Hannafin now. Like, holy jeez. I still don't like their goaltending. Thompson I have more faith in than Hill, but Hill's played well. And I still have Leonard technically with their team, which is just crazy. He could come back maybe. I don't know if he would this year, but what a team. So it feels like they've got a whole massive amount of like problems to deal with, but they somehow manage it and manage the cap somehow. God knows how. It's wild, absolutely wild. But Vegas has got a great shot at another cup. That's super cool. It's just a weird situation with Vegas. Good on them, and they made great trades too. So I really like what Vegas has done, but it's this weird thing. I wouldn't want to deal with all those complications, but maybe there's some method to their madness. Maybe there's like this weird strategy. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but I don't know. Pretty cool. I like it. Vegas has a great shot at a cup, in my opinion. So, Boston. So they didn't really change their depth. Was he they just picked up? No, it was Peaky. Geeky and Peaky. Ha. Anyways, forwards. Good enough, I would argue, to compete for a cup. Defense, I would definitely say good enough to compete for a cup. Goaltending, definitely enough to compete for a cup. So I like it. I think Boston's got a great shot at a cup too. And Boston made some good moves. I like Boston. Yeah. Pittsburgh. The wonderful Dubas that I think is absolutely garbage. I thought when he was in Toronto, it was cool to try a younger guy and see, like an analytics guy, and see how it would go, and he didn't do that great. And then, yeah, I think he's already started to screw up Pittsburgh. I think I said at the beginning of the season that I didn't think Pittsburgh had a shot at a cup. I think they would be competitive, but probably just shy of a cup. I don't know what I said. You'd have to go back to my preseason predictions, but it's not a bad team. Defensive depth maybe is lacking, but offensively they've got enough going on where they could compete. Goaltending's probably okay enough. So it's not a bad roster. Just shy of being competitive for a cup, and losing Gensel. Now I don't think they're competitive. Making the playoffs, maybe they could, but I don't even think they will now, given how far they are out. So, yeah, don't like it. Sorry, Pittsburgh and Dubas. They're so brilliant to hire Dubas, and he's gonna go screw it up again. Rangers, they I think did fine picking up their stuff. It's just depth. They've got enough going on that they're a good team. Their defense is fantastic. They've got depth there too. So goaltending's great. I think they're great. They did the right moves to just round out their roster for the playoffs. Rangers got a good shot at the cup. Didn't make any big splashes, but I think that's okay with them. So another competitive team. New Jersey. They didn't really do much, but I like what they did with the goaltending. I like that they picked up Allen. I think this could make them better next year, but I don't think... I think they were punching above their weight. So, yeah, I don't think New Jersey's as good as they're supposed. Like they perform better than they're supposed to perform. So, I think they're still going to be one of those bubble teams and not competitive for a cup. Oilers. So they needed offensive depth, defensive depth, and probably goaltending. They got probably enough offensive depth, I would argue. Defensive depth is okay, but not quite good enough. So they're one of those, like, just, if everything goes right, they could win a cup. If not everything goes right, they're up against, like, Vegas powerhouse. We haven't even gotten to some of the other teams that I would argue are powerhouses, like against New York. Could they beat New York? Maybe not. Boston. Could they beat Boston? Maybe not. So Edmonton, I don't think they did enough. So they never do enough, and they never fix their problems. Is the big problem with Edmonton. They've got a lot of the great pieces at, good cap hits and stuff, but they're blowing all their opportunities in the prime years of these guys' careers. So don't like it, Edmonton. You guys are... I thought Holland would be better as a GM, but man, he hasn't done well enough. So another team that's going to just completely... Like, they've got a great shot at a cup. So Barkov, Tkachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Verhaeghe. Rodriguez is good for a depth guy. How's he done this year? Pretty good. On pace for his normal stuff. Okposo, Tarasenko, Luosterainen, Cousins. And this is, like, based on all these cap hits, this is their year to have gone for it. And they never really gave up much. So it was like an inexpensive going for it. It's so fantastically done, in my opinion. Awesome. Defense is super good. How has Ekman Larson done? Because he's one of those guys that was fantastic. And he's done great, actually, this season. So, wow. Man, Florida. And they got Bobrovsky. Stolar's okay as a backup. Spencer Knight, I don't know if he's even played. Has he really played? Yeah, he's played, just not well. So they got, goalies if everything goes wrong. They picked up Hellberg, too. So, Florida's got a great shot again at a cup. So, And they've got all the depth that they could possibly need. Almost too much depth, I would argue. 15 players. God. Fantastic. So Florida, I would say they're really going for it. Now, I was concerned about the fatigue from the Stanley Cup run and all the injuries, but I think they're fine. Well, especially given how well they've done. And now adding this stuff, man, they're going to be good. Dallas, another team, super deep. How has Duchesne done since he's been with Dallas? Very well. Wow. Great. I had a feeling he would fit in well. God, what a team. How are Ben and Sagan doing? Because they really... Yeah, Sagan's kind of almost back to where he was producing. Ben, bit shy, but still plenty good. But they've got a great team, so... And the Tanev pickup, so I don't know. I had high hopes for Dallas. Just looking at like Florida, for example, and we will look at Carolina, Winnipeg, Rangers and stuff. There's a lot of really good teams. These playoffs are probably going to be fantastic to watch because the best teams are going to be really good. So Dallas has a shot. Maybe they could have picked up a couple pieces. Maybe a bit better of defense. Maybe one depth forward or something, but plenty good. Dallas is going to have a good shot. I really liked what Philadelphia did, and I have a feeling it's all these guys that played for Tortorella that he's familiar with, that he might be able to get to produce. So, and I always thought that they were better than they performed, and like they've got good defense. If everybody was healthy. Got a lot of injuries, though. That's the problem, especially on D. So if their D got healthy, with their forward roster, they could be competitive for a cup, in my opinion. I like their pickups, too, so... Oh, but goalie. Carter Hart being out, too. Yeah. I think Urson's done okay, but I haven't paid too close of attention. So I don't think they'll go for a cup, but I think they made themselves a better team. I like what they did. Moving forward, they might actually be able to maintain their competitiveness that they've kind of established this season. I've been interested to look at, Carolina, Winnipeg, all these teams, man. Just crazy stuff. So, Aho, Svechnikov, Teravainen. I don't like Kotkaniemi that much. I don't think he's done that great, has he? No. I didn't think he would, so I'm not surprised. Now with Kuznetsov, they have Nichushkin, Stahl. And then they have Gensel, who will be there. Man, they're going to be good, and their defense is one of the best in the league. Orlov, Slavin, Burns, Skji, Pesci, I think is how it's pronounced. D'Angelo, how has he done since he's moved over? Bet you well. Nah, I guess normal for him. Maybe a bit low. But anyways, goaltending's probably good enough between all the guys if anybody's healthy. The concern is if multiple people get injured, could be a problem, but Carolina is going to be really good. Yeah, they've got a great shot at a cup. Winnipeg, an interesting one because they're my favorite team, and I think they've got somebody I haven't checked. Where is he here? How's Perfetti doing? 31 points and 60. I would have thought he would have done better, but Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers, I follow, Niederreiter, Velarde. and it's great. I like how they've done this scoring by committee. Now they actually have. So they used to go to offensive lines, defensive line, and then pretty much like penalty kill specialists. And then that wasn't enough. I don't think you can do that anymore. I think you need more offense built in. So you need like offensive specialists probably for like your fourth line, or 3 offensive lines and then defensive guys for your fourth or something like that. But anyways, so now they have a whole boatload of guys that are offensive. They picked up a few guys that can produce. So Monahan to Foley. Man, they're deep offensively, and their defense was already deep, and they added guys. How's Sandberg done? Decent. So, and they got one of the best goalies, if not the best goalie in the league. So, man, Winnipeg's going to be good. A lot better than I would have now, especially with the pickups they made. For good value, too, with what they gave up. I think they've done well. On that note, actually, let's pull up... here, give me 1 sec. Let's pull up my predictions again. And I'll see if there's any... not updates that I have to my predictions, but... well, I guess maybe updates, like just where there's... slight changes to my my predictions. Oh, I meant to put me full screen in anyways, it didn't work how I wanted it to, but whatever. Okay, so Leafs, I think the Bruins are better. Panthers are definitely better. Now again, remember in the preseason I made these predictions based on a number of things like Stanley Cup playoff hangover for Panthers, and obviously there's been changes to the rosters and so on, and injuries and whatever, all sorts of different factors. But so I made these predictions based on all those factors, at least for the standings. Now I did do my Stanley Cup predictions, but we'll at least just reference these the standings here. So from the Atlantic Division, I think like the Red Wings could be a surprise, but they're not going to win a cup. Maybe a long shot chance at winning a cup, but probably could surprise and maybe win a couple rounds. Best case scenario, but they might not even make the playoffs. Lightning, they could surprise. I just don't think they're good enough to win a cup with their depth. They made some decent moves. Oh yeah, I forgot to comment on Duclair, picking up him for depth, because that's something they needed. So they kind of fixed some of their things they were missing. But oh yeah, and the problem, I don't think that defenseman, what's his name, Sergachev, I don't think he's going to be coming back this season, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, missing him, even adding those guys, I don't think they'll be able to compete for a cup. Maybe could win a round, surprise a team like Toronto, but yeah, I don't think they'll go for a cup. Panthers, Bruins. Panthers in particular, I think, could win a cup. Bruins could surprise and win a cup, if you would consider it a surprise. So of this division, Panthers and Bruins, I would say, have a chance at a cup. Metropolitan, Hurricanes. I like the Islanders, even though they didn't do anything. I still think if they make the playoffs, they could win a cup. Rangers have a shot at a cup. Nobody else. Flyers could maybe win a round or two, but probably not competitive. So Bruins, Panthers, Hurricanes, Islanders, Rangers, I still have. Central Division, Stars, Avalanche. Stars, I'm not as confident as I maybe was at the start of the year, but still they've got a great shot at a cup. Avalanche, I don't know across everything. I don't like the feel of the Avalanche. But they have won a cup, so maybe I'm just biased. I don't know. But they got a shot at a cup. Jets, I'd say too. So Stars, Avalanche, Jets. Out of the Central Pacific, definitely Vegas. Oilers. I'd put maybe like the Bruins. They're kind of not quite a cup team, but could win a cup. Jets I'd probably put in that category. Yeah. So basically, okay, so I'd say at this point of the season, with all the moves, everything that's happened, the top teams would be Knights. I'll say Avalanche, even though my gut tells me no. Knights, Avalanche. I have to say Stars because I felt so strongly about them to start the season. So Knights, Stars, Avalanche, Hurricanes. I still like the Islanders, as crazy as that might sound to people. Islanders. Rangers, I would put in the same thing as like the Avalanche. I just don't. My gut tells me no. But they should be in the mix too. And then Panthers. So there's a bunch of teams that are all very good, and that could all win a cup. And that's not even talking about Bruins could win a cup. Jets could win a cup. Oilers. So, I mean, it is wide open. There's so many competitive teams. And like I said, I think the gist of it is how do I get back to what I was trying to get to? There we go, finally. It's because something was blocking another thing. So anyways, there's so many competitive teams. Almost anybody could win the cup out of all those teams. There's probably when I listed, so there's 7, plus there's probably another at 3 at least. Maybe up to 5. There's so many good teams that could compete for the cup. So what I was getting at is these playoffs are just going to be so interesting, so exciting. Wow. I don't know. Hockey lately to me hasn't been so, I don't know. I've never really liked some of the teams that have won, and like teams that maybe shouldn't have won, and that's okay, but it's been unpredictable. And now it's unpredictable in a different way, where I think there's just so many competitive teams, whereas in previous years there'd be a handful of teams, and then that was basically it. But now there's just so many teams that could win a cup. So I don't know. It's like I said, it's going to be crazy exciting, these playoffs, I think. Trade deadline kind of just added to it with all the moves that happen. Pretty cool. And I'm glad that I didn't follow it as the trades were all happening, because the cumulative impacts, I think, kind of make things make more sense. But yeah, man, that's cool. So yeah, I'm excited. These playoffs are probably going to be great to watch, so we'll see my assessment is correct, but I'm certain it's going to be great. So anyways, that's it. That's a recap of the past 2 weeks plus the trade deadline, my opinions on all that stuff, and maybe updated predictions, but not really I mean, well, you'll get my predictions anyways at the start of the playoffs, so just tune into that whenever that happens. So I guess that's where we'll leave it. If you like the stream, hit the like button, share with your friends, subscribe, turn on notifications. The channel homepage has upcoming streams on regular NHL content. So that's going to be 2 weeks from now, covering the 2 weeks prior of news in the NHL. But like I said, it's probably going to be 3-week periods now. Oh, and I just noticed somebody left a comment. Victor asked if the Rangers just get worse. Sorry I missed the comment. It didn't show up on my screen on my phone, which is where I was monitoring. So my apologies there. But I don't think they got worse. I just don't think that they necessarily got better. They added depth that they maybe needed. I don't think they changed that much. But anyways, sorry, I was just getting distracted by something there. Yeah, so anyways, sorry. Because now we're past the trade deadline, so there's going to be less news, and so it's probably going to be 3 weeks I'm going to do together for the recaps. It was supposed to be weekly, but yeah, it's just if there's not enough news, then there's no point in doing it more frequently. Yeah, so that's going to be either 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now, depending on the amount of news. And if that gets changed, I'll update the date and time on the channel homepage, so just take a look at that for upcoming streams. For franchise mode, that runs Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Give me a sec because I should probably remember this. 10:15 p.m. Eastern. Then when the time change happens, it's probably going to be later then. But anyways, that's the current schedule. And then also there might be adding a day of the week to do franchise mode probably a couple weeks from now, but we'll see. Be a pros whenever I have time or feel like it. Any comments, leave them in the comments. Suggestions likewise. And then, as I mentioned, I'll be streaming franchise mode for the rest of the day, probably many hours. At least probably 5. I'll probably keep it. I might break up the stream into a couple streams if I need to take a break. So, for example, to go eat or something. Or I might keep it all one and then eat at the end of it. I don't know. Anyways, long story short, probably at least 4 hours worth of franchise mode for the rest of the day. Could be upwards to like 6, maybe even more, but we'll see. And yeah, so that's going to be the plan for the rest of the day. Trade deadline day. It's always one of my favorite days, and so I'm going to spend it doing more hockey stuff. So thanks for tuning in if you did, and we'll see you guys probably in like 15 minutes, half an hour to play some franchise mode for the rest of the day. Okay, so see you later. Okay, bye.